There will not be another platform who care about your progression as much as NewComma does. If you use all of your channels to serve other people, you end up feeling depleted a lot because creativity.
Natalie Narh is a visual artist, creative director, and the co-founder of NewComma, a platform built to amplify underrepresented voices through art, culture, and storytelling. In this conversation, Natalie opens up about her journey, the identity, the discipline, the faith, and the mission that drives her work, and how NewComma is reshaping the narrative for artists across Africa and the diaspora.
In having that conducive environment from my childhood in terms of having the freedom to be creative, I also realized that not all of my friends had that same freedom. People have the desire and the talent, but they don't necessarily have the environments that.
This is a story about purpose, perspective, and what happens when creativity becomes a tool for impact. This is the Hungry Creative Podcast. Stay tuned. Before we dive into today's episode, I have one little ask of you. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This is the only one free way to support what we're doing. If you've been enjoying the stories that we've been telling or just enjoying the content, please just take a moment to subscribe to the channel and make sure that you also share with someone who could benefit from these conversations. Thank you so much. All right, let's dive into the episode. Hi, Natalie. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Let's get to know Natalie. I think our community would like to know you. Maybe a bit of a little introduction would be good. So who is Natalie? What do you do? How do you make money? What do you do for fun? Kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah, I'm at the basis of things, I'm a multi-hyphenate creative, and I help other people be creative as well. And it's not necessarily just in terms of helping them hone their skills, but it's also helping other people realize that they're creative in the first place. For myself, I always just start at the beginning. The beginning, I mean, in terms of my parents' meeting, because I feel with the way they came together in terms of personality types and the recognition of the arts, it created a really conducive environment for my sister and I to explore ourselves creatively. So my sister Naki, she's a full-time artist, and for myself, I venture into design, creative direction, strats, music. But music is the only thing I don't do professionally. But I have a really high interest in music, either in the making or once again helping other musicians define their crafts outside just the soundscapes themselves. So yeah, going back to the point of my parents, for myself, it was always about defining my feelings and my expressions through different mediums. So as a kid, in kindergarten, I liked to sing. So my teachers would literally take me from class to class singing just because I liked to sing. And my parents would enable that as well. When my grandmother passed in 2005, my dad made me sing at her funeral for the choir and everything. And I guess for him, it was, my way of using my interest to honor my grandmother. But I guess for him as well, it was also just helping me understand the process of what music making or people who do music do, right? And although it was quite a morbid environment for that to be happening, I think it still allowed me to just explore myself creatively. And we always just describe my sister and I as the resident family graphic designers, because every time there's a funeral or something similar close to us, we end up doing all the branding for that. So that's been something that has been long standing. But in terms of how I make my money, I'm one of the co-founders of NewComma, which is a social media platform that connects African creatives to each other and to global opportunities. So a lot of the work that we do through there is businesses advertising their jobs, residencies, grants, competitions, etc. through the channel on NewComma itself, but then also a third-party platform like our newsletter, other socials and friends. And there's an internal creative agency that we have as well, just called Hyphen. And through Hyphen, basically do all the things I said before. So creative direction, production, strat, all the things that live under that. So that's also another key revenue stream that we have at the moment. And yeah, that's the shortest way I can put it at the moment.
Okay, interesting one. Thanks for that introduction. I think definitely gives a lot of perspective into the topics, and I think some of the
conversations that we'll be having regarding your work and regarding obviously NewComma as well, which was I think was the first for me, was my first interaction with the work that you do. Obviously, I came across the platform before you even, and then seeing the platform I was just instantly curious that, what's this NewComma about? And I mean, obviously, you're going to be answering some of the questions that we have anyway on that during the session. But yeah, such an interesting backstory, mentioning like how you are obviously multifaceted in terms of your creativity. More importantly, about like where it all started from. And I think you mentioned that your parents also like have some artistic inclination or something.
Yeah. So they're both creative people, but they don't have creative careers. So my mom, she used to run a gym, and so she's very much into fitness, wellness, all of that. And then my dad, he is a business consultant, so he used to do lots of business advice. Or I mean, he still does that. He's retired now, but that's kind of the world that he lived in. So in a lot of ways, we kind of do the same things in terms of helping companies and brands define themselves and their strategies, but he's more so on pure operational advice, whereas I'm more so purely on like visual and creative direction. So yeah, they all kind of live in the same world. They complement each other in some way.
Absolutely. I think what you also said about, I mean, this particular conversation is an interesting one, or this part is actually interesting because I feel like the same applies to me in a way, because my parents also were not or are not like creatives in any like shape or form. But when you dip it, like creativity is actually not about like only like the creative things that we know now.
Exactly.
Things that
it's
we
not
categorize
finite.
as creative things. Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to be an artist or you have to be a designer or something. Like the mere ability to solve problems is creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about bringing things together to make sense. And you can think of this in like corporate, because you have people that probe into problems, analyze situations, and solve problems. And it's using the creative instincts that they also have. So let's speak about your work, and also like a bit more about you, and also like connecting to your work. So you mentioned building, you said you have a creative agency, Hyphen, and also NewComma. So they're like both running on the same kind of platform, but just one is like creative facing, and then one is like people facing, if that makes sense. I don't know, like serving people, like, okay, community and stuff. What was the point when you realized there was a gap, or there was an opportunity for this solution or this product to come to life that birthed the idea of NewComma? I think we should speak about NewComma this time.
Yeah. So I'll answer from two perspectives. One from my personal perspective, and then where like Nigel and I's missions aligned. So for the first half, in terms of for myself, so in having that conducive environment from like my childhood, in terms of having the freedom to be creative, I also realized that not all of my friends had that same freedom, in that we might all have the same interest, but we might all not have the same perspective from our guardians, in terms of, yes, you enjoy this and you can make a life out of this thing that you enjoy creatively. And even as a kid, around the age of like 7 or 8, I used to run this club called the Small Steps Club. Literally just used to get my mates, like 10, 15 of us. It was initially in my grandmother's hotel in Tama before. I grew up in Ghana, and then eventually at my mom's gym. So I bring that up because they were both women in my life who were supportive of that random initiative that I had, and were both ready to give up like a section of their respective establishments to help me do so. And that, to me in itself, was a recognition of them seeing how I was attempting to build these spaces, or to create these spaces for my friends who also had these interests. So all these clubs used to do was would come together, share cool science facts we had found over the week, music that we had found that we liked, or literally just bring coloring books and then we color. Or I used to watch like these random, like, those learning shows. And usually those shows, they're showing you how to do something really creative, but like it's got like a science fact at the end of it. So I would just steal stuff from those videos and then make us like test them out during those sessions. And I ran those for quite a while. And for me, it just formed the basis of, yes, there's one thing to recognize that you have this interest in creativity, but then it's like, what next after that? Do I keep this to myself? Do I pick up a subject in school that relates to this interest? Do I find someone to teach me otherwise? I mean, then YouTube wasn't really kicking off until like 2009 and Friends. So time eventually told the story of that. But yeah, that was that first phase of things. And the second is smarter and lower secondary school / high school. My co-founder, Nigel, had done this course at the London School of Photography. It was a 4-day course. I did the same course the year after. And the way that I started photography in the first place was my dad always picked up interest here and there. And at a point, it was photography. So when he was teaching himself photography, he was kind of teaching me at the same time. He kind of got bored after about 4 months, but then I stuck with it. So a few years later, he was kind of like, okay, I guess there's something there, but I have nothing else to teach you. So if you want to do this course, then sure. And as much as it was just 4 days, it was a really intensive course. And so much to the extent that when we both got back to school, when Ets was at the time in Ghana, there were so many of our friends who also wanted to learn photography, but then obviously not everyone might have had the same access to the same course. So I literally lifted the syllabus, that 4-day syllabus, and taught my friends photography for the last 2 years I'd spent in that high school. And then it became the stage of, okay, people are applying for like university now. What kind of courses are they picking? And once again, you have the classic case of my friends are obviously interested in pursuing a creative career, but then their parents are telling them to pick courses that have nothing to do with those interests. So for me, it was yet another realization of the fact that people have the desire and the talents, but they don't necessarily have the environment that is pushing them towards those opportunities. So that second phase of my life is yet another validation of the fact that the talent is there, the interest is there, but then the resources or the environment to nurture those interests and talents aren't. So Nigel obviously also had this same philosophy, and back in 2012, that's when we started talking about, okay, we've done this course. There needs to be more courses like this in Ghana, because there are obviously people like us here who also have the desire to learn photography or graphic design or all of these things. And of course, these institutions do exist on the continent, but more so for us, it was helping people realize earlier in their careers and journeys that this is something I can do and this is something that I can pursue professionally. So that was the core of things. But in 2017, after we'd both moved to the UK for uni, we had a natural detachment from the creative scene back home in Ghana. So we started this documentary called The Cool Fish Project. We literally got creatives and just entrepreneurs in general to share their stories. The first edition, we mocked them up on on popular publications like Forbes, Complex, Veda, etc. And the whole idea behind that creative direction was based on the element of Western validation, in that we know that we're talented, we know that the skills are there, but we don't necessarily always receive that recognition until we've had that Western validation. And for us, we should be able to recognize that in ourselves before heading over to these platforms. And that assumption kind of made sense then, because seeing these people mocked up on these covers, so people thought they were real. They're like, oh, we didn't realize you had done XYZ. And we're like, no, because I was just started, but okay. And it was quite interesting because it turned into one of manifestation, because some of the faux covers that we had done, some of the people that we featured ended up with real features on those publications like Complex and Friends. So it was quite cool to be able to have those stories being told from our perspective ahead of these Western publications, kind of getting the memo of what was happening. So we wanted to keep going. We did 2 editions. We wanted to keep going and expand to other regions of the continent. But because we were interviewing the people who were before the underground scene, in lots of ways, the underground scene is still defined, right? The people who define the underground scene are still like the tastemakers in their respective niches. So that means they're still kind of known to an extent, whereas we were interviewing the people right before that layer. So if I'm trying to find the same pocket of niches in Nairobi or in Lagos, if I don't know anyone in Nairobi, if I don't know anyone in Lagos, I'm only going to find the people who have already blown, right? So for us, it was looking at the existing platforms that we have, like Instagram, Behance, Twitter, and Friends. And as much as you will find Africans there, of course, that like there's Africans on every social platform on the planet, but there is no platform that is being created working backwards from the nuance of what it is to be an African creative. And for us, it was thinking about what a platform like that would look like, and also just being sensitive to the fact that as an industry in this market, Africa is kind of the newcomer, literally, compared to everyone else. So that's how our name came about. We were just thinking about what a name that could kind of speak to the fact that we're dot connectors. That's one thing. And that's where like the actual comma punctuation comes in the name. And the second part of that is also looking at the actual word newcomer, spelled C-O-M-E-R. When there's like a new kid in class, they would typically be called, well, at least in Ghana, they would typically be called the newcomer for a few weeks. And then eventually people start calling you your name, right? And in a lot of ways, that's perfect. Yeah. So there's that illusion there. And for us, it was like, we are the new like kid globally in the creative industry. We have the skills, talents, etc. But in terms of the perception and the infrastructure, we're still very much at that baby stage, right? And it was just being sensitive to that. And comma just has like that intonation of pigeon as well. So it's just the newcomer, C-O-M-E-R, but then comma kind of forces you to kind of have like that subtle inflection there. So that's also another element to our name. And the last element is the fact that Africa is just in this awkward place where up until now, or up until the rise of social media, we've always had our narratives being defined by other people who aren't us, right? And this stage is about taking ownership of those narratives through new mediums and distribution channels that we can earn. So a lot of the reason why NewComma exists, it's so Africans can tell their stories through platforms that actually have their best interests at heart, because every other platform wouldn't necessarily have that. They might have specific initiatives for Africans, yes, but at the top line level of their objectives is never going to be starting from Africans. How can we elevate them as much as possible? It's just not going to be that way.
So I think that takes me to my next questions, which is, what has the journey been like? How has the progression been like? What's the acceptability or the acceptance of this product being like generally?
The first thing I'll say in relation to that is the journey of NewComma has been really interesting so far, because we still haven't hit critical mass. NewComma is only useful if there's people on the platform, right? And until we hit that critical mass, it's really just people who kind of get it from the start, right? The way Twitter between 2006 and 2009, maybe even 2012, people don't really get the concept of Twitter. And then 2014, everyone was like, oh, and then like they started like moving.
We've been there since.
Since exactly. So then you have that pocket of people who kind of get it from the jump, right? And I've always told myself that as far as I put myself into this, it needs at least a decade to see it like full breath before I'm like, okay, we've kind of done our best. This was great, etc. So we're like roughly halfway through that now. But I think in terms of those validation moments, it's the same scenario, but it's happened in two different places. And the first was in Nairobi. So our key, as much as we're a global platform, the key represented regions are Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and the UK. And of course, we have people from all over, but those are the 5 most dominant regions on the platform. And we went to Nairobi for the first time in 2023 for Nairobi Design Week, and we also did a little activation of ours with Tangaza Magazine. And at Nairobi Design Week, I met some people in person who already knew about NewComma and were using NewComma. And for me, that was really cool in that moment, because obviously I don't know people from anywhere. Like, I'm meeting them today, literally living like thousands of miles away from me at that point, but they're using and understanding the value of our product, and they can understand like where they can understand where we're going as well. And that was the first like real life tangible connection of the digital community that we built, because up until then, between the end of 2020 and 2023, we've been meeting everyone online. So it's like, okay, yeah, great. Like, of course, there are real people signing up, but seeing them in person, saying that, oh, I met this other person through using your platform, or this is the first time I've been able to share my work within the context of other African creatives who get it. I don't have to explain myself to them. So that was one. And the second was in Lagos, which I was just in last month. And Coca from Lagos Meets Femi, we went to Unilag, Madhouse in Unilag, and the person who was taking us like through the different spaces in Madhouse was also like, oh, she's quite familiar with NewComma. She shares opportunities with her community all the time. And for me, that was also another validation of, oh, like I met you today. I don't really know you from anywhere outside of like this, like these 4 walls that we're in now. But it was great to know that she already knew about what we were building, and her community was already engaging with NewComma as well. So I say that to say that these are 2 completely different regions who are already tapped into what we built on with NewComma ahead of us physically being in these spaces. So that's why the whole digital element of our platform is so important to us, because it's all about expanding the opportunity surface area. I don't personally believe that every African is finding a job today through just using a jobs board. People are finding jobs through their personal networks. They meet people at a party, they get talking, you can get a job through that way. Conferences, concerts, exhibitions, there's so many real life interactions and scenarios that can breed a very conducive ground for gaining jobs and other opportunities in any industry, let alone the creative industry. So for us, we're really leaning into that online and offline experience for African creatives to be able to make the most of the global network that we've built. So yeah, that's definitely the next thing, like finding many more places where we already have these digital touch points and curating physical experiences as well for those communities.
Amazing. So if I was having a chat with you, imagine me as a young creative now, or a creative, doesn't even have to be young, just a creative, just someone that is, trying to get by, create, do great work, and also position myself for like global opportunities. What would be a reason? What would you say to me that will make me actually get on NewComma right now?
It points to what I was saying earlier. There will not be another platform or another group of people, I would say specifically, who care about your progression as much as NewComma does. One key bit of feedback that we get from our members of the community is how they feel that NewComma has a very direct has very direct investment in their progression as a creative. We have the benefit of being a new community, which means we have the time at this stage to actually have active involvement in people's needs, compared to other platforms who are in the millions now who don't necessarily have that. So we don't necessarily see the fact that we're a new platform as a negative. If anything, it's a clean slate for everyone who's tired of Twitter, tired of LinkedIn, and is looking for a place where they will actually get the visibility that they're looking for. the problem that will be a good problem to have in the future is when there's so many people, and then we now have to figure out what our algorithms look like to ensure that people still have the visibility that they're looking for. However, with NewComma now, you have the benefit of having the spotlight on you from the day that you sign up. You have the ability to kind of get that kickstart and get everything going in the way that you can define ahead of NewComma being like set in stone. So you getting in early means you're getting more visibility and more value from the platform than if you're joining a lot later on. And someone might argue that it's counterintuitive for me to phrase it that way, but it's just the reality of any community or any social platform. At the beginning, even with touring with artists, I always think about how Masego, I saw his first headline show in 2016. There probably wasn't maybe more than 200, 300 people in that space, but that felt so curated to me and my relationship as a fan of his music compared to me seeing him at Cross the Tracks in 2023, I think, where it was literally like almost 10,000 people. Like that didn't feel as intimate, right? You can't necessarily scale that intimacy or that experience. However, those 10,000 people are still there to see Masego. There's still value that you get out of it. There's still value that you get with being in a park full of thousands of people who all have a common interest in one artist or a particular genre of music, right? So at the earlier stages, is getting the value directly from the people who are curating these spaces. But then as the platform scales, there are also other people who will then also be tastemakers of the common interests that we have. So you have an even larger pool of people who would also have a direct investment in your progression. And you might even become that person yourself for other people. So for me, it's just scaling our impact through attracting other people who also have that common mission to ensure that African creatives get the opportunities that they deserve and they get paid to be themselves. As far as people have that philosophy and mission, they'll find themselves a newcomer. And why not be a part of a community who has your best interest at heart?
Definitely want to consider. I'll definitely think because when you think about platforms like Twitter, people that have been on Twitter for way back, because I remember being on Twitter as far back as 2009, 10.
Yeah, that was me too. April. Yeah. It was April 2009 for me. We used to say good morning to each other.
Yeah, we used to greet each other like, how you doing?
Follow that.
CYDM.
All of that. Exactly. So,
oh my goodness.
It's this kind of vibes when you come in now.
I feel like those people are like the shapers of the platform. I mean, obviously before
we built it brick by brick.
Yeah, obviously before everything scattered, thanks to Mr. Elon, but yeah, everyone on the platform right now will definitely be considered as the founder,
the real OGs.
The real OGs, you know what I'm saying? And it gives you when you're on Twitter and you see you celebrate they do this
the Twitterversary
anniversary.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, 15 years? You'll be here for 15
Yeah, exactly. It's been too long.
10 years. It's like a bragging right, like, yo,
exactly.
I was in here.
I've seen things you have never seen.
Bruh, we've seen things. I used Uber Social. I used TweetDeck. Like, all these platforms are like...
Yeah. And that's why it's so interesting to say that, because I think that is also a testament to the grace that these platforms had when they were in development, right? And I say that to say that obviously NewComma could have all the social features in the world, but there comes a limit to our capacity and our current resources. And people did not experience Twitter jail, and they didn't realize that like that. And all of that was happening as a caveat.
Oh my days.
And even if you move to
I forgot that.
Exactly. If you move into other industries like public transports, like at a point, I can't remember if I ever wrote about it, but I can't say it anyway to be the same thing. But on TfL, on the trains here in London, there's literally a caveat on the floor that says mind the gap, right? The gap between the train and the platform. That could be described as something that shouldn't exist. Like, surely if there's going to be a gap, then it should be closed to make it easier for people to get onto the train, etc. But then there's all kinds of factors that lead to that gap being there, respective of whatever line you're traveling on. But they have given the caveat, mind the gap, for decades now, and everyone has just kind of like settled. They're okay. It's not going to make me not take the train. But I guess it also depends on you and your needs as well. But I'm saying all of this to say that it's fine to have caveats as far as like the core of what you're looking for works. That caveat should not be a reason for it not to exist in the first place. So that's also another thing worth bearing in mind.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk a bit more about the journey of building now, more like entrepreneurship as well, which is a whole conversation on its own. So when we're chatting, you mentioned also I think earlier in the conversation, I also touched on like wearing multiple hats. But the journey of building is such a journey that sometimes takes you off that creative side of work and makes you more business and, growth minded. So my question is for you as a creative, how have you been able to balance being a creative, like retaining your creative side and also having that business growth mindset? How have you been able to balance those two things? Because I think that's something that I think I personally struggle with.
I definitely still struggle with it myself. I think NewComma and Hyphen in itself kind of has that balance. So Hyphen still allows me to work on other people's brands and stories, which gives me a break from working on NewComma. Because like I was mentioning to you earlier as well, that the NewComma marketing team is myself. It saves me time in terms of management. I think that's also another thing that people don't always consider when scaling their teams. When you scale your team outside of the budget of scaling the team, there's also like the mental capacity of managing that team as well. And sometimes in wearing multiple hats, the answer is yes to delegate. I'm not saying delegation isn't important. In certain scenarios, of course, it's specific to everyone. Delegation makes the most sense. But in other scenarios where you're handing over like systems, etc., to other people, and those approvals need to be made, sometimes when you're working in a very dynamic environment, you need to be able to make those calls yourself. Because as soon as there's other people involved, that's another layer of communication that you can't always afford to have in certain contexts. And for us, like things change like by the day,
like
right?
Today, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour.
Yeah. And
boom.
it's just if I was working for someone like that would be frustrating for me, because like, oh, I thought we were doing this today, but like
yep,
we're
sounds
not. So what do we do now? And because I understand that frustration, I would rather just like tighten all those communication areas. But it's not to say that resource isn't needed. For us, it's just being pragmatic and realistic about the fact that we're in the middle of a fundraise. It doesn't make sense to bloat our resources on that right now. But in doing that, it still helps me be creative and have my own visual language and expression through the NewComma visual language, because I think so much of that is indicative of me as a person. And by that, I mean, like, even from our palettes, like our color palette is quite like vibrant and bold, but you would even realize like on our page, we use bright palettes, but they're always muted hues and tones of those colors. So they're not necessarily always like shouting in your face the way like a neon would, right? And the reason why it's that way is because I think as an African creative part, sometimes we feel, once again, using the illusion of like the new kids in the class, or even just kids in the class, or even just being a younger sibling, sometimes you have to speak louder to try and get like a word in or to be heard. Whereas I feel like in us trying to do that, we end up diluting what we're actually trying to say. And from the other person's point of view, the medium is the message. They're just looking at the tone of what you're saying and not the actual message that you're trying to convey. So for us, that's that's one thing that our palette speaks to as well. And even with our comma device, like if you squint, it kind of has the same like structure as the African continent in terms of like having a horn and like the whole like bigger bit at the top and all of that. But for me, it was also trying not to have something that felt too like stereotypically African. And that's because there isn't just one visual language in Africa. Even in a single African country, even the Adinkra symbols that are in Ghana, that's primarily for like the Akan tribes, right? There's so many other tribes in Ghana who also have their own symbols, let alone the rest of the continent. And for me, it just didn't feel like it made sense to try and like stem it from one particular visual identity on the continent when thousands exist. So our branding has been curated in a very specific way to speak more to the general idea of sending across narratives, forming new narratives, and being able to distribute and disseminate these narratives without necessarily having to directly trickle down from an existing identity system, like using Adinkra symbols and friends. I do think those are still relevant visual elements to use in other design projects where the actual meanings of those icons and designs make sense. But for us, we wanted to take something that felt neutral and can be applicable in various contexts. And a new visual element I've started introducing is like those multiple circles. I was going to use a term centrifugal, but that's not what I mean. I've started using these like repetitive circles to communicate the fact that there are several like forces at hand in terms of us trying to send our narrative across. There are also like several like push and pull factors that also impact how like how that narrative is sent out as well. But then also outside of that, it's also just a subtle nod to the fact that there are many communication points that happen on NewComma, and NewComma is all about sharing information, whether it's through peer-to-peer learning or through sharing an opportunity, sharing a creative process, sharing an experience. It's all about sharing and just like expanding like these narratives based on that. And I think since we're at that stage where we're at that inflection point of getting to the next stage of critical mass, I think that whole idea of centralizing those narratives as it grows kind of speaks to those new visual elements that I've started adding. But even with that, like I added that overnight. I didn't have to like sit with a team and then like brainstorm all of that and do it. It was just like, okay, let me just see how this goes. And I just started using it, right? But yeah, I will not understate the importance of having a team. I think for us, it's also just being pragmatic about the stage of business that we're at. But at least now we have the systems to hand over to people once we do expand the team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely, there's something that I definitely take away and I also like agree with. I think shipping fast as an entrepreneur is so important. Makes sense. Okay, so one question I think to wrap up this conversation on entrepreneurship is if you could give one piece of advice to someone, a creative specifically, who wants to become an entrepreneur, maybe wants to build like something like what you have, like a NewComma or maybe something else, anything else, what would that advice be?
Be very realistic about what you have to give up to make it happen. And also be very realistic about the support system that you have around you to make that happen. And the reason why I say that is there's the life.
Like, what are you going to tell this person? You're telling me, boy. You're telling me like,
No, but I mean, actually mean what I say. Like you are going to sacrifice a lot of your life for this, and there are other people around you in your life who also have to sacrifice certain aspects of their lives for you to make this thing that may or may not work happen, right? And the reason why I say it's both sides is because you're not the only, you don't exist in a vacuum. There are other people in your life who will also be impacted by you making this decision. So it's you just being realistic about, okay, this is the job that I have now. Do I want to start this business just because I hate my job? Is this a question for me to find another job that I would like? Or I've actually found a pain point through working in this job that I'd like to address with my business, or it might even be unrelated to whatever job that you have in now. But for me, I would always say, especially in like today's climate and economy, I wouldn't advise you to just jump out of any job without having a plan. I don't even necessarily think it needs to be a plan that's a set in stone, but you do need to understand what your North Star is. And I know I'm saying this in a roundabout way, but for myself, I wrote my North Star when I was 19. I've always kind of known the kind of career I want to have, right? But I never defined the path to get there. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm trying to get to. I know I will kind of go like in bits and ways. And it just so happened on like towards the end of this year, I'm seeing like elements of how what I wrote at 19 will like come to be. And it's just through different triggers, catalysts, and scenarios that have brought that to life. But I don't feel like I'm like jumping off ship in like in an irrational way, because I have the confidence in knowing that my 19-year-old self kind of had an idea of what this might turn out to be. She just didn't know how it would come into play. So it doesn't feel as scary, right? So, and all that I'm saying, knowing your why, knowing your North Star, I think is always the core thing. Those also kind of points to what I was saying before of if a client doesn't know what they want, everything else that they do after that is going to be built on really shaky grounds, because if there was never really an idea of what the endpoint was from the beginning, that means you take any and everything that's coming, because you don't really know what you're working towards. So that's one key thing. And then the other side to your support system is, once again, being realistic about the people who are in your life, whether it's like your partner or like your parents or like your siblings, your guardians, like whoever you are in close proximity with, who has a very direct impact on your quality of life, or you have a very direct impact on their quality of life. Being realistic about how this particular venture will impact their lives as well. And I think it also changes dependent on obviously your age, what phase of life you're in and stuff like that. Like if I was 21, 22, there's certain like risks that I would take then that I wouldn't take again now. But it's also knowing when you have that space and ability to do so. So for me, it's just being realistic about your environment and how conducive it is to venture into something that might seem uncertain, and you just being at least aware of that.
Okay, next one for you. If you weren't doing design or running a startup, what would you be doing?
I would still be doing something design or creative direction related. So to be fair, if I wasn't doing design, I would most likely be like focused on like creative strategy and direction purely. In another life, I might have done photography like full time. I might have gone into music. I might have been a voiceover artist at the point. My sister and I really wanted to do voiceover acting. I might have just done public speaking because I really love teaching. I think teaching is a really big element of what I enjoy. So I might have done something like that. And these are all things I'm saying might, but like I'm just of the beliefs that in my lifetime, I'll eventually do all of these things just in like different capacities and different decades of my life. So I never really think of like, a what if. It's like okay, sure, I'll do it, but like, which part of my life will this be the most relevant?
All right. Okay, I think we're wrapping up. So we'll just ask a last question, which is something that we do for all guests. And it's that, what are you doing to be a better version of yourself? What are you currently doing?
I am listening to the parts of myself that have stayed consistent instead of attaching myself to the parts that are fleeting. The reason why I say that is, it, like, once again, to the point I was saying about my 19-year-old self had a very solid understanding of the points that I would be at now as a 29-year-old, like eventually looking into the future. And within those 10 years, there's so many parts that I interrogated because I thought that 90-year-old person wasn't sure of what she was saying. And every time I've like veered away from that version of myself, I always end up coming back to that. And if I was just confident in that person from the beginning, I would have made more traction in the things that I had decided to do. But I think it's also being accepting of the process of not trusting that version of myself, because I think it's also the same thing in saying that if I had just done that from the beginning, I also would not have given myself the opportunity to be open to other ways of solving the problems that I had cited, or other ways of getting to the places that I wanted to get to as well. So, yeah, I think in general, it's just being more trusting of yourself. And that's what I'm working on now, because I do tend to find that when I'm being sincere in what those belief systems are, it helps me get to where I actually want to go, instead of trying to compromise that to accommodate other people's wants and needs.
But I feel like there's more to say on this. I think that I feel like there's definitely more to say on this. I'm going to ask one bonus question, which is that, and I feel like I feel like I have a strong inclination to ask it, which is, what have you had to unlearn to discover this version of yourself, or to be this version of yourself, if that makes sense?
Yeah. What I've had to unlearn is impatience, and impatience with myself, but also being patient, like with other people, right? Because it's a push and pull dynamic. You have to be confident enough with yourself to know that even if it takes longer than it should, like, you will get there. So like, it's fine. And then the other side is not projecting your timelines onto other people. If you know you can finish something in 20 minutes and someone might need maybe an hour to do the same thing, but in the hour that they use, their output will be better than yours. You need to be real enough with yourself for you to accommodate the additional 40 minutes that are needed to elevate the outputs that you're looking for. But you also need to be pragmatic enough to know that I can do the 20 minutes. It might not be as great as that 1 hour output, but this is what we need in the moment. And you being able to have that discernment and making that call is what makes you a better entrepreneur, or what makes you a better leader. Our
audience will definitely have, learned one or two things. So guys, Natalie has given us a very interesting pitch of our product, of our platform. So you guys, please check out NewComma. We'll make sure the link is in the description of this video across all the platforms that we're posting on. So check out NewComma. If you're a creator, if you're a creative, you're a designer, this is a platform that you should definitely be on. I'm on there. I'm like a ghost kind of, but yeah, I'm there still. I check, I binge, scroll through people posting their work. I think it's actually active, and the more people also come in here, the more people can also support what Natalie has going. I think it's so promising. It's one of ours, and even beyond that is a platform that can give you visibility for your work. It can position you for opportunities globally, and it's early stages. I mean, it's an early stage right now, so it's also a good place to jump in to also be part of the people that shape this platform. All right. Thank you so much, Natalie.